Hello, everyone, and welcome. If you are new to this series, my name is Jason. If you are a returner, welcome back. And to everyone, I hope you're doing well, and thanks for tuning in. I always like to start with a quick quarantine update. This will be day 19 since I started working from home. And yesterday, I finally did a grocery run after 17 days since my last grocery run. In fact, it's been 17 days since I've even left this apartment. And I mentioned in one of my last videos that next time I go out, I will be wearing a mask. It is now officially recommended that everyone wear a mask, even if it's not an N95 mask. So here's a homemade mask that my girlfriend Selena made. Has a little pocket to put a twisty tie in so that it can clamp around my nose, and a bigger pocket here if I wanted to put a stronger filter in. I didn't use that last night. Turns out any kind of protection at all helps to flatten the curve. So yeah, that's my nifty mask. I recommend that everyone wear it. And speaking of the grocery store, I did notice some changes. There are now limits on many items, which is good because I was finally able to buy rice. Since the last time I went, it was sold out everywhere. I did notice all the staff had masks and gloves, and most of the customers also had masks. There were some here or there that didn't. So that's my quarantine update. Let's go ahead and go on to today's topic, which is all about solving problems with code and what the design process looks like for that. So here we're going to watch a video. And so right now, before I cover it up, it says, inhale, minute 1.
I told you that I wanted to help people affected by COVID-19, but that my main enemy now is time. This led me to ideate that one thing I need is faster pipelines for the production of these videos. So this episode will have 5 parts. We're here right now. If I had to name them, I'd pick inhale, investigate, prototype, test, and inhale.
Yeah, so those are going to be the 5 sections of this video. Inhale, investigate, prototype, test, and inhale again. So as you watch this video, go ahead and keep those in mind and think about what section you are in. Each section is about a minute long. There will be some prompts that shows what section is beginning, but it does go away quickly, so keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and continue.
As designers, we inhale when we look at the big picture and decide what to do. That's where we ask why. As we exhale, we take action, like building something, or writing code, as we'll do in a moment. That's where we would ask how.
So Stephen is circling, emphasizing why and how here, and that's a reference to a previous episode. I think it's Stephen's episode 7, where we talk about the hows and the whys when learning something or learning the code. And traditionally, we're taught how to do something, and then we practice how to do it. But we should be focusing on the why. Like, why are we writing it this way? Why are we learning this at all? And those are the better questions to ask when learning something. And that's what Stephen is referring to here. So let's go ahead and continue.
We'll inhale and exhale on the design of faster pipelines as many times as we have to. And then one day, hopefully soon, we'll take a deep breath and move on. This is Shotcut, an open source video editor.
So Shotcut, an open source video editor. Open source just means that the code is available to look at, to edit, to modify. And that's great because then, if you see features that don't exist and you want them to exist, you can code in your own features, or you can modify this or extend it, or maybe have another program that works along with Shotcut or feeds into it. And so that, those are kind of the perks of open source software. So you might notice we are now in the investigate section of this video, and it says minute 2.
It's what I use to edit my videos, and I do not want to replace it. I just want to make things faster. Look what I have to do by hand when I process one of yesterday's illustrations. I import it, I flip it, I make it about 16 times faster, and then that's just the starting point for adjusting different portions of it to get it to match my voiceover. Tons of my editing time gets spent trying to get the important moments of one piece of writing, like illustrations, to match up with the moments of another piece of writing, like a voiceover, to produce the final video that is greater than the sum of its parts. I didn't even have time to use this illustration in yesterday's episode. As you can see, it was daytime when I started, and it got late. Most of the time gets spent slowing certain clips down or speeding them up, so I wanted to investigate if I could automate even a small part of that to inform what I think about during my next inhale. Shotcut is a software that creates writings called save
So now we're in the prototype section.
files, which happen to be in a syntax called XML. If you wanted to, you could write an XML file by hand, open it up, and see it in Shotcut as if you had been using Shotcut the whole time. Shotcut doesn't care who wrote the file as long as it's formatted correctly. My plan is to write code that writes out files like these.
I'll pause there. So Stephen plans to write code that writes out files like these. This is referring to something we called meta writing or meta coding, writing code that writes out code or writing something that writes out something else. And we did talk about that in a previous video, but that's what he's referring to here. And we do that as coders all the time. Instead of just writing in one language, we'll write in maybe a language that we're more comfortable with, or a language that has access to other things. And in that language, we'll write code that writes out something else. In this case, Stephen's going to write something that writes this XML file, which is a file that tells Shotcut to write out a video file in a different way. And speaking of XML, that stands for Extensible Markup Language. It's for encoding documents that are both human readable and machine readable. It's a lot like HTML, but instead of focusing on displaying and rendering data, it's more focused on the transport of the data and what the data actually is. So let's go ahead and continue.
Ideally, I want to say something like, speed up my illustration from yesterday by a factor of 2, which would produce the XML as if I had used Shotcut to write it. I want speed up to be a kind of magic spell I can cast on any video file to make it as fast or as slow as I want it.
Stephen mentions a magic spell, and I wanted to comment on, wouldn't it be great if we had like a magic spell for real life things like make dinner, do laundry, or clean the apartment? I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's actually good to think big like this, even if you can't immediately see how code would help. But thinking big helps with the design process. And maybe like for making dinner, I might code like a recipe book to help with making dinner, or to help clean the apartment, I might code a unique calendar with checklists and things like that, or something that alerts me when I haven't done a certain chore in a while. So even if you can't immediately see the answer, it doesn't hurt, to think big, right? So let's go ahead and continue.
In coding, if you want a magic word, you have to define that magic word. And I did. If you snoop in my GitHub, you'll see that it's not so different from what I wrote on this paper.
So we'll go ahead and end there for this part. We'll continue with part 2 in the next video. But before we end this, Stephen said if you can snoop in his GitHub, you might actually find some of this code. So let's actually do that before we end this video. I'll go ahead and go to GitHub. I do know his username is srfoster. And so we're looking for something that has to do with speeding up videos. I'll look at his recent commits here. Something called COVID versus COVID-19, which relates to these videos that he's making. And there are some files here. So I'll go ahead and click on demo. And look, right at the top, we see a function called speed up. And it defines some variables, and here's some XML that he was referring to. Great, yeah, so we found the actual code that he's referring to. We'll actually dive more into this in part 2. So if you are, I'll go ahead and switch scenes here. If you are watching this on Udemy, there will be some assignments for you below. For everyone else, thanks for tuning in, and see you on the next video.